Another crazy candidate, Cenk, the Republican nominee to oversee all North Carolina public schools, has been exposed as a lunatic conspiracy theorist who has repeatedly called for the public execution of Democratic officials. She sounds lovely. This lovely lady we're talking about is Michelle Morrow. Here she is, smiling. Conservative activist who last week upset the incumbent superintendent of public instruction in North Carolina's Republican primary. CNN dug up some dirt, it's her dirt, in her past, found a treasure trove of violent and conspiracy posts. 2020, let's show you this one. Responding to a Twitter user asking, who wants to see Obama tossed into Gitmo for treason, she wrote. And here's the response. I prefer pay-per-view of him in front of the firing squad. I don't want to waste another dime on supporting his life. We could make some money back from televising his death. Charming. Another post, May 2020, she responded to a fake Time magazine cover that featured art of Obama in an electric chair, asking if he should be executed, saying death to all traitors. These people got a lot of time on their hands. Death to all traitors, Obamagate. As CNN reports, that is not the end of her lunacy. Let's watch this.
She's also been linked to the QAnon conspiracy theories, sharing a slogan associated with QAnon, where we go one, we go all, at least 7 times on Twitter. She's also promoted the baseless adrenochrome conspiracy, which claims that celebrities harvest the blood of children.
We'll get through this, and then we'll get the perspective from you guys. She's also called public school socialism and indoctrination centers. If she wins the general election, she'll be in charge of those very public schools and the state's $11 billion budget. And I suspect that'll be ripped wide open. She'd also help set educational priorities and work with the state's Board of Education to set and implement curriculum standards.
A lot of mainstream media don't give you honest news. We do. You know why? Because of you. Paid membership on YouTube makes all the difference. Hit the join button below and you become the hero that sustains us.
Cenk, what do you think so far? And I guess, how did these people get so far to unseat the incumbent and actually have a shot at this?
I hope that a lot of the Republican voters didn't know about her statements. They just thought she was a normal radical right-winger who was slightly to mid-level nuts, and they didn't know that she was full-blown lunatic. But I'm not sure. They might have. So, look, I think that the Democrats a lot of times wind up having pretty bad candidates because Democratic leadership picks the most corporate guys, and their primaries are usually a bit of a farce. Sometimes you'll get an outlier, obviously, and we like when progressives win those primaries. But on the Republican side, it's the voters themselves that are picking these folks. They've done a revolt against their corporate wing, which I love. That's great. That's a good start. But then the revolt went sideways immediately and went to lunacy. And this is one of those examples. Look, this is just a fact, and it's an uncomfortable fact, but if you think that it's just outliers that are just 1 or 2 people in the country, you're very wrong. So there's an enormous number of people in this country who believe in conspiracy theories, enormous. And then there's about 15% who believe in QAnon-like conspiracy theories. And 15% is a giant number, guys. That's like 45 million Americans that walk around us that believe in things like drinking the blood of children is what Democrats do or elites do, etc. They're talking about killing and murdering people. And yeah, are there for folks who are mentally unbalanced on the left? Of course, it's humanity being what it is. But unfortunately, a lot of them have congregated on the right, and she's among them. So, I mean, what do you want me to tell you Pretty Little Lies and tell you she's not deranged and completely detached from reality and incredibly dangerous? I can't do that. She is all of those things, and it's super obvious. Look, I've gotten to a point where if it's a person who's a civilian and they're not involved in politics, media, they're not influencing anyone else, let them go. There's too many people who believe in conspiracy theories for us to try to cancel people, etc. But you want to be in charge of the schools? You're a deranged lunatic who thinks that the rational course of action is to maybe murder political opponents? And you would like to educate our children? No, hard no. I mean, I don't know this district well enough, but for God's sake, North Carolina, for God's sake, do not elect her. If you elect her, Jesus Christ, man. Because if you didn't know during the primaries, you know now.
Yeah, I tend to want to give voters, even Republican voters, the benefit of the doubt for the most part, in the sense that most of them, if not all, don't want to see every liberal who's ever lived get the electric chair. I know that's like a low bar to clear, but I would assume that most voters don't feel that way, even about the first Black president. But this lady, it's important, as Cenk said, because she is running for public office, right? Like she's running to be a civil servant in charge of the education of a bunch of, people's kids. And guess what? She's right. Public school is socialism. It's a social good that we don't just throw to the wolves of the free market because we believe every single American deserves a decent education, whether they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth or not, right? I would love to hear this woman's ideas out in the open about what she thinks the school should be like. But also, and a lot of people don't like when I say this, but I do think we get the democracy that we deserve. If the voters decide they want a flaming, raging lunatic to be in charge of their schools, then so be it. That's kind of what we sign up for when we sign up for a democracy.
I agree with that, but I wonder, and Cenk, you said it, maybe people who are voting in the primary, they didn't know these things about her, but how much do you think it is that they did know some of it and they just didn't care because they just wanted anarchy? They just want to shake it up and be ugly with it, and there's nothing you could do about it. I will say this, though, too. She mentioned indoctrination in the schools, and I would say that is accurate. I don't mean it the same way she does, perhaps, but there is indoctrination, particularly in places that are anti-woke and making sure that people are so comfortable that they don't know American history and they don't know even recent history. That part, I would agree with that word. But again, the voters who are deciding, who are just saying, you know what, I'm going to use my vote to shake it up.
Yeah, I think that one's nuanced, because are there some voters that are absolutely crazy and agree with her? Yes. Keep it real, keep it real. I mean, just so long mainstream media denied this, and every time we showed it on the Young Turks, like at a MAGA rally or whatever, they would, and this stretches all the way back to 2015, 2016, etc. Mainstream media would be like, no, how dare you? You cannot say these spurious comments about Republican voters who are the heartland of this country. And they would try to say all these pleasant things about the voters, etc. And I was like, you guys are so full of crap and you're patronizing. Now they're beginning to get some of it, right? But we're I kid around about how we're the fairest show in America, but we are. Because if some of you are nuts, I'm gonna tell you you're nuts. Sorry, I don't care if you think, no, I think that executions for people who disagree with me is a great idea. And I bet that there are people secretly drinking the blood of children and they're running the country. Okay, no, total, you're detached from reality, nuts, gone, lunatic. Sorry, that's just reality and you're just not anywhere near it, okay? But that is not the majority of Republican voters. I think the majority of Republican voters are just mad. They're mad at the establishment, they're mad at what's going on and that they've been, they're losing power, and some of that is illegitimate. Why do I have to share power? Subconsciously they think, with others, because they've been in charge their whole lives and they don't like not being in charge. And then there's the legitimate mad, which is the establishment is ripping us off. And they're right, they are. Politicians are corrupt, they're right, they are, right? So it's nuanced. So if you want a little bit of optimism here, Trump is bewildering because he keeps being, he has such a weak opponent, such a historically weak opponent, but he's still leading, right? And so he's Teflon Don in a lot of ways. But remember, a lot of the crazy Trump-backed candidates got slaughtered in 2022 and in 2020. So, and a lot of, not the majority, but enough Republicans turned on them and they lost their elections. Almost all of them lost, a couple won, but the great majority of them lost their elections. So let's try to have a little bit of faith in North Carolina and see how it goes. And there is one thing I'll say about what Waz said. Overall, I totally agree with that on democracy. Sometimes Democrats, they'll see a Republican win, and then they'll push to get rid of women's reproductive rights, etc. Well, vote. Democracy matters. It's relevant. And if their side wins, they get to set the rules. That's how it works, okay? And so you can't say, well, I don't like their rules, so they shouldn't get to set them. No, not how democracy works. So I agree with Waz, but there are limits. So you can't do things that are unconstitutional. And it appears that she's proposed several unconstitutional things, right? But outside of that, that's why you need to go vote.
And I do want to say one last thing to piggyback off of what Cenk mentioned about the voters and the Republicans. One, it's two things. One, I do absolutely think that the majority of Republican voters are not foaming at the mouth, racist people who want to string me and Sharon up like they would have done in Jim Crow South, right? I happen to think that. And two, I think you kind of have to believe that, because the other option is to believe that every single Republican voter is completely deranged, and so therefore politics are useless. There's just no point. We either have to kill these people or get over it. Like, we might as well not do politics anymore if the belief is that the other side are these wholly unreasonable, deranged people, right? And so that's just my opinion on, whenever we see Republican voters behave in a way that we don't agree with, obviously I don't agree with what they're doing, but I don't think it's that, they're these helpless, basically alien people that we have no chance of dealing with whatsoever.
I think that we are getting some deranged people. That's what I actually believe. When you vote for somebody who you would think tried to kill off half the population the way he handled COVID, who is allowing the rich to get richer while the very people who are showing up for him are hurting. I think that some things actually are deranged. I also think that democracy has been moonwalking back for a little while now. All the redlining and all the little, corny things they're doing. Is it really one person, one vote? This thing has gotten so far out of hand where we're not sure what counts, what matters anymore. So I think that there are some really deranged people. And is it helpful when you're trying to have a conversation or a debate to declare that the other side is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? No, it's probably not helpful. But I don't know that it would change anything if we were a little more accommodating and open to what has become super crazy.
Yeah, I'll end by agreeing with both of you, and that is possible. So first off, Sharon's right. Some people are just deranged. Michelle Moreau is clearly deranged, talking about executing people and all the lunacy that we just explained to you guys. I think Donald Trump is pretty deranged. He has always believed in almost all the conspiracy theories. He's the one that spread the birth of the conspiracy theory about how Barack Obama wasn't born in America. He tweets conspiracy theories all the time. He was supportive of QAnon. Yeah, he's got his practical side from time to time too, but he's borderline lunatic in my opinion. Now, having said that, it's not the majority of Republicans. Why do I say that? Guys, when Barack Obama got elected after his inauguration, you know what he polled at? 83%. 83% of the country had a favorable rating of him, positive rating, saying we like this guy and we're rooting for him. 83%.
And then he blew it.
Yeah, well, that's a different story, and I think you're right about that, Waz. And he had this.
That's part of the story, though. Like the fact that these people are willing to believe in a QAnon or some of this crazier stuff that they go with, I think it's a failure of our institutions. Our institutions have actually failed people legitimately, and they're not stupid enough to not see it, right? And so I think that's part of the story here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the number one thing that Republican voters are mad about is that the establishment has screwed them. And they're not wrong about that, right? So, but remember, there is no they. That's true of races and ethnicities and religions. There's no one black opinion, Jewish opinion, et cetera, right? But it's also true of political opinions. Yes, that makes you closer to each other based on certain shared ideologies you have, obviously. But both the Democratic side and the Republican side have such variety within them. So yes, some of them can be crazy, and yes, some of them could be legitimately mad about things that are going wrong, but misdirected. So the answer to people who are misdirected is, and by the way, in my opinion, the answer is always honesty. So you shouldn't be patronizing and be like, oh, maybe we should execute some of our political opponents. No, that's not a maybe, right? But at the same time, you could still look at the other guys that are mad at legitimate things, but that are wrong about the solution, and have an honest conversation with folks and go, here's why I think you've got the wrong solution. If we don't do that, we're never going to be able to regain any of them and take the majority so that we can go in a sane direction.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.